Greetings to you, Crocodile Army.
Well, greetings to you, Zaunstar. I understand you want a calm, rational discussion on the SJW, anti-SJW issue. So let's go through your points in the order that they made. Take it away, Zaunstar.
I've been avoiding the topic of my stances on the various wars that rage between SJWs and anti-SJWs for a long time. It was one of the main factors, in fact, of my pulling back from YouTube for a while, the community obsession with all those issues. But maybe I can address my main stances in this one video so I can make myself clear, and then I can go back to other topics. Many anti-SJWs who obsess about this topic are super aggressive, and they'll abuse and harass those they disagree with, and they'll encourage their followers to do the same.
Whoa. Hold on there, Zaunstar. That's quite a sweeping statement you just made there. Some people might say that they're making robust arguments. You, on the other hand, seem to perceive these content creators as hostile, or as you put it, super aggressive, abusive, and engaging in harassment. Well, that sounds somewhat hyperbolic, and that is one issue. We could set that aside for further discussion, but what cannot be put to one side is the additional claim that they encourage their followers to do the same. That is quite an accusation to make, isn't it? And it is presented as a fact, with no supporting evidence. It is a sweeping, unsupported generalization. The reason this is important is simple. After making such a statement in your introduction, any YouTuber you now mention, either directly or indirectly in this video, is painted with the same brush. If you believe this to be true, then make the case. Don't just drop such statements into a debate and then move on,
as so many keyboard warriors of all types will do, and I want no part of that, because I'm not in middle school anymore. Some hardline SJWs, on the other hand, are very quick to shut down conversation, block people, or form crusades against those who cross a line in the sand that they've made somewhere before they get all the facts, and I don't want to do that either. Some on each side may share traits I listed for the other as well. Buckle up for this part, though, anti-SJW snowflakes. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm your friendly neighborhood white guy. Hi, neighbor. I have an advanced degree, a very good career, and a fair amount of disposable income. None of those things are anything that I need to feel sorry for, and nearly everyone on all sides agrees with that. The only time I hear about guilt is when an anti-SJW tries to tell me that some radical SJW thinks I should feel guilty for my privilege because an article on a clickbait factory website that I could not possibly care less about says so.
Okay, now, as you claim to have an advanced degree, I shall be free to be blunt. Your statements here indicate a parochial and superficial understanding of the topics at hand. You appear to spend your time viewing content you perceive as nothing more than a regurgitation of clickbait articles. You then assume that this is typical. In reality, many YouTubers on the anti-SJW side focus almost entirely on the impact that SJW ideology has on academia itself. They focus on the attempted colonization of scientific disciplines by feminism and SJW dogma. The impact is not trivial, Zaunstar. We are not discussing here young impressionable people making feminist content in their bedrooms, but the application and consequences that such philosophies have in both academia and in the broader society.
For a lot of anti-SJW YouTubers, that's their bread and butter, cut and paste every week, red meat for their fan base, and a cynical attempt to get people to care less about their fellow humans. Before anti-SJWs get triggered and tell me there's no such thing as privilege, I agree that the people who coined the term in academia should have called it something else for clarity's sake.
Oh really, Zaunstar? You have an advanced degree. Are you seriously going to reduce this debate to quibbling about semantics? Think about what you just said, and I'll quote, "The people who coined the term in academia should have called it something else for clarity's sake." It's not the label, Zaunstar. It's the concept that people take issue with. Do you seriously think that swapping the label would in any way change the intent or meaning of the underlying concept? And while we're being pedantic, it's not the term privilege that people take issue with. It's the addition of certain demographics to the term, such as white privilege or male privilege. That is what most people take issue with, Zaunstar, not the bloody term itself.
Despite that, most people are plenty bright enough to understand it with 30 seconds effort, but won't because it's much more cool to ridicule people. I don't care what it's called, but the bedrock for me on this is gender, race, and other circumstances can make life easier for people. The historical reasons for it and what should be done about it, I'm more than happy to discuss in all facets. But the fact that these differences exist isn't even controversial to me. Part of the debate is about the relative importance of these issues. As I pointed out in a video after last year's election, most social justice issues are not very high on the list of the most important issues in politics. If you can't afford health care anymore because of something the Trump administration does, or you find out you just lost a tax break because Trump has to pay for the estate tax giveaway that will save his family billions, or the rest of the world turns their back on the United States because we have a president who spits out lies like a gun with a bump stock, those decisions have serious consequences. Many YouTube atheists spend much more time on the weird SJW of the week than they do on the rest of politics or the religious right, who's basically in charge right now, by the way, and I advocate for that to change.
Zaunstar, remember earlier I mentioned you take a somewhat parochial view. All this may or may not be true in the US, but these are not universal. Trump is not head of state in United Kingdom or Europe, and the religious right is simply not an issue there. Feminism and the progressive left impact Western culture and the societies that thrive within it. Do you see the difference? You seek to dictate discourse, but your worldview is highly constrained. This, and your apparent lack of curiosity, makes your position in these matters weak.
Then again, there's so much centrism, which I've come to define as political nihilism, or yelling at all sides and telling them it's all hopeless, that maybe it's best some people let those who still care handle it. In the corporate world, we call this addition by subtraction. Yes, we're very clever.
Addition by subtraction. I'm sure you guys are very clever indeed. In computer science, we call that overflow. The mathematical types call it modular arithmetic. So we have our moments as well. And hey, our methods actually work and are not just edgy memes.
The core of most of the people who are the most obsessively anti-SJW is their dislike of feminism, or at least what they believe is feminism. Giving myself a label isn't that useful, so I'll tell you my feelings on women's rights. Women should have full reproductive rights, though shared custody of children should be the assumption in court in a divorce. All women and some men have to deal with sexual harassment, assault, and rape, mostly by men, but that is in no way a reflection of me personally as a man or any other individual man. Catcalling and street harassment is definitely gross. Consent is must for any sexual activity, and if someone tells you to stop pestering them for a date or sex, you should stop. I'm pretty sure none of that is controversial to anyone, right? I mean, the more people would follow these very basic rules, the less guarded women would have to be with men. So being a decent person is a win-win for everyone. There are some radical feminists out there who have ideas that I find bizarre. They're the minority of feminists, but they get amplified because of anti-SJWs attacking them and pretending their ideas will gain a foothold.
You know, you were doing extremely well there. I'd agreed with almost everything you said. Then we got to the conclusion, which was slightly less impressive. Well, at least in my view. The term feminism covers a broad spectrum of views, that much is true. But what is of particular concern is the feminist activists and the theories they often try to implement as real-world interventions, such as the Duluth model. It's also worth pointing out that when you mention reproductive rights, there was a conspicuous omission. Might this be due to an assumption or perhaps a hidden bias? That too might be a topic for further discussion.
Those people are not worth my time, and if I wasted a lot of time on them, I feel like it would give people the wrong impression of the popularity of those ideas. I could talk about it more often here, but it's really not my favorite topic. Now, to be clear, people can talk about whatever topics they want. I wouldn't want anyone to think I'm taking away their free speech, after all, a concept many people seem to not understand very well. Free speech is about the government sanctioning you for your speech.
Yes, many people don't understand the concept of free speech, and the fact you seem to believe that such rights are sanctioned by the government seems to include you in that category as well, which is a bit unfortunate. The best one can hope for in a civilized community is that the state would actively support your right to free expression. If the government sanctions speech, then you don't live in a pluralistic or democratic community, but rather a dictatorship, because an entity that permits can, by definition, deny. Any civilization will have very few restrictions on speech. These restrictions we might debate, but in general, it's best if people put to one side the idea that government sanctions speech.
There are limitations to that, like with everything else, but very few. As a general rule, I don't support deplatforming, but in a private platform like Twitter, they set some basic limits. There are some people who are obsessive and angry enough to run afoul of the rules, and then predictably complain that their accounts were suspended because there are limits to how much you're allowed to harass people. They don't get a lot of sympathy from me. This is, of course, when the battle cry of free speech comes up, but rarely is there any introspection on whether the behavior is a good idea or not. I'd like to know what you think, though. I like meaningful conversations, so have at it in the comments, and I'd be happy to chat. Maybe we can break the YouTube comment stereotype.
So, we come to the end of this particular adventure, and it's been different. But before we end, I would like to make an observation, ask a question, and then make a suggestion. First, the observation. In one of your graphics, you had several prominent YouTubers, which included Gadsad and Sargon of Akkad. The question I ask is this: do these two YouTubers in particular fit the description of anti-SJWs you articulated in your introduction? If so, why? I noticed before making this video that King Crocoduck has already made a comprehensive response in the comment section of your video. My suggestion is follow his advice and actually watch his content on the topic. It will serve you well. It will enable you to engage the real issues that concern many, not only within this particular community on YouTube, but also many in the wider community, and that larger community, Zaunstar, mostly resides outside of America. Shocking, I know, but there you have it. We end our adventure at this point. I hope you found something of interest in this video. If you would like to support my channel, I now have a Patreon page. If you're unable to support my work through Patreon, then you can share, like, or comment. It's all good. Thank you for watching.